Now, this SDR currency mapping, though, why the heck would a crypto coin want to map the assets with which they are digitizing into the supported SDR currencies, unless they were somehow associated with the SDR? And as Lynette did point out, it sounds like China was assigned ownership of figuring out a way to make the SDR a reality.
Hey friends, thanks so much for joining us. I hope you're all excited to hear this very important conversation, because I think it will be important, and it's going to help us sort of re-level set about cryptos, what they mean. There seems to be a real emotional response now to cryptos, and almost as though it's a religion. And I just tried to have a conversation with a friend of mine named Lynette Zang, and it was met with quite a bit of vitriol from my friend Jsnip, Joe, and Bix Weir, and even Andy Hoffman. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and we'll have a little bit of a roundtable discussion. No holds barred, and we'll proceed with respect. So I want to welcome to the show Jsnip, Joe, and Brad. Joe, how are you?
Doing good, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And Brad is a senior software engineer over at Intel, and I've interviewed him once before. Brad, welcome back.
Hey, Sean, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Now, since everyone's familiar with Joe, he's kind of famous in the crypto space. And by the way, I have made the joke to others that I really don't wade into the crypto talk very much. And I've literally said that's sort of the territory of Jsnip and Bix at this point. So it's funny that the one time I wade into the pool, I get eaten alive.
We pulled you right in.
Yeah, you did, you old cantankerous old son of a gun. Brad, let's talk about your background briefly so people know who you are and that you are indeed a smart guy.
Well, I don't know if it's about intelligence. Let me just give you a little bit about credibility, because that's really very important here in this discussion. So let me just quickly talk about academics. So I have undergraduate degrees in biochem, biophysics, and computer science, as well as my MBA, split between Oregon State and Purdue. I have about 5 years of experience. I worked with IBM as a software engineer previously, and I'm hitting about 6 years with Intel presently. So. And then also, as we discussed last time, Sean, a couple of weeks ago here, I am also working part-time in my own time on the Precious project, which is incredibly similar to, I believe, what our topic is going to be today. So I'm very interested to wade into this. So thanks for the invite.
Your project is Precious Coin, and we can talk a little bit about that. I know that after you saw Lynette's initial video, which led to me contacting her, you feel that this ACChain coin is essentially the evil twin to what Precious Coin could be. So now we'll throw it back to Joe, because Joe, I know you're also very experienced when it comes to software and a lot of this stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'm a software developer, database applications, CRM applications, kind of a thing. I wrote my own, kind of like people might be familiar with LogMeIn or TeamViewer. I got a program that I wrote that does kind of what they do, except you use remote desktop instead. You know, just a tech guy basically. Self-taught on a lot of stuff, but I, you know, kind of dive in with both hands and feet and learn what I need to do to get the job done, kind of a thing. So when I heard about cryptos and which the first thing would have been Bitcoin, I knew how it operated and that sort of thing, and I just thought, I don't know about this thing, but then I watched it, I paid attention to it, I studied it more, and about 6 months later, I think I completely changed my mind and did some videos on YouTube to say, hey, look, guys, this, I think I got this one wrong in the initial investigation here. There might be something to this, and then since that day forward, I've always kind of jumped on the, the crypto bandwagon, so to speak. But, so many people may take me as being biased just because I am, but I'm not. I still tell people, it doesn't make sense to me that you have this digital thing, you can't even touch it. You can't do, at least with $1, you can print the Federal Reserve prints $1. I can pull them out of my pocket. I can, give them to you. You can give them back. And we can actually touch it. With these things, you can never touch them. You know what I mean? It's like in the ether, so to speak. But that doesn't change what they are and what they're doing and where this world's heading. So, I feel like I have a duty now to kind of report on this stuff and let others know.
Yeah, and I know you've tried to be forthright about what you're buying and sharing information openly, and we'd all like to see people get wealthy, whether it's from precious
Sure.
metals, cryptos, or both. And I've made the argument now for over the past year. I know in Bix's video today he called me a newbie and I'm scared, and he really conflated a lot of things which we can address here later on. And I invited Bix on here late in the game too, and I don't think he was able to join us, but I feel like he was conflating some things because I started talking about the benefits of owning a little bit of Bitcoin to have some skin in the game. Way more than a year ago, I disclosed when I bought Ethereum. I also own IOTA, Populus, Pillar, Salt, a bunch of different tokens because I want to have some skin in the game. And I've ridden Ethereum from 20 to 420, back down to 140, and now to 300. So fear is not at all what my conversation was about with Lynette in terms of cryptos in general. My fear, as I emailed Bix, is about the fact that blockchain can be used to liberate humanity or enslave humanity. And based on Brad's email that made me aware of Lynette's video that she posted just the other day called "The Global Unit of Account is Now Shifting from the USD to the SDR," I watched it and it really resonated with me, and I did have fear that, maybe the banksters, the people at the top of the pyramid in Basel, Switzerland, at the BIS, have come up with a way to ensnare and enslave humanity with their own evil blockchain. So that's how the discussion started. And I just want to read this. This is the original email Brad sent me when he alerted me to the new Lynette Zang video that I just mentioned the title of. He said, which exposes a new crypto coin. Turns out it's an evil twin of Precious. Same dang concept, but controlled by the evil bastards. And it's the backing for the SDR. Now, I think we all made a leap that Lynette was correct. Maybe she's not correct, but I do think the big picture should be kept in mind, and that is that if the banksters were ever able to pull this off, and if they could really start to digitize the world's tangible assets, they could keep this scheme going forever. And I guess I'll throw it to you, Joe, because you know that the banksters' plan, or at least the New World Order plan with 5G, is to chip and track and trace everything on the planet, all things and all living creatures, including humans. So this leap, I think, that Lynette made, or I should say the deductions she made, or the research she's been doing, made a lot of sense. But do you think she's entirely wrong? Is she way off base?
I'm not going to say she's way off base. I think when she picked this coin out and the way everybody took it, because I was getting flooded with emails, so it's not just me, thinking this, by myself, is that this coin, this ACChain coin, is the IMF's coin. The SDR is going to be attached to this thing. They've got it in their website and some of the imagery she showed, where it talked about the SDR and that sort of thing. I mean, let's go back for a second to a guy named Aaron Russo, filmmaker, great guy, created a documentary called Freedom to Fascism about the IRS income tax scam and all this crap. He exposed his relationship with Rockefeller. They want to chip everybody. They want to do all this stuff. Shortly after that came out, that guy got a fast-moving cancer and died. All right, I don't write that off as conspiracy. I think he was taken out. He exposed their plan. It's exactly what you just said. It's what Lynette has said. It's not anything I haven't said. We all have talked about this, but I think when she made the leap to where she's kind of attaching this particular coin to that as if, hey, they're working on this and this is going to be their platform and this is what they're going to use. I'm sitting back here saying, well, hold on, I haven't, the IMF, there's nothing on the IMF that even mentions that coin for one thing. And when I look at what the coin's doing, I go to their website. I watched her. By the way, I watched the same video you watched of her. And that guy I told you earlier that emailed me. He it's like, hey, watch this video. It was the same video. So I know where you're coming from as well. But I think she's making a few assumptions. And where I'm looking at this to say, wait a minute, all I see is another WordPress template website, which all of these companies that run out these ICOs use. It's the same practical WordPress plugin template. It looks flashy, it looks new, it's modern, it's the same thing. So I'm thinking, okay, this is another company. This is a Chinese company. I looked up their website. It was created like 3 months ago, right? It shows who registered the website. This has nothing to do with IMF at all. And, I'll say my opinion, but I'm doing the research. And it's just another company wanting some skin in the game. And I think what they did was take it to a level of, hey, because like we'll have one coin like, InsureX. We're going to be on the insurance, it's a, blockchain technology where you can buy and sell, insurance or whatever. You can get car insurance, house insurance, any kind of insurance. Then you've got some like Veritasium, where you can do these smart contracts and you can rent these things, right? What I'm seeing what these guys are doing, matter of fact, another one, Proppy. Anyone hear that one? Proppy, a real estate token. So I'm seeing this particular, whatever company or organization, ACChain, or just ACC as they like to be called, as saying, hey, we want to do all that stuff. We want to be all of it, and you want to use our coin, and they have multiple ones. I clicked on one of them. I was looking. I left the page up just to give you an example. There, because one of the things she mentioned was, they're getting in the real estate market. They're going in Texas, except that U.S. citizens aren't allowed to get in on this. I'm like, well, hold on a second.
I know. I should have corrected her on that as it pertains to EOS and others, right? And that did pop into my head. But sometimes in an interview you don't interject. I'm trying harder and harder these days not to interrupt my guests. But that's one where I should have asked.
You're the best at that, by the way.
I don't know if that's true. I should have made. I should have jumped in at that point, I think, to say, well, wait a minute.
It's okay.
But it's a regulatory problem with this criminal government. That's the problem. Yes. They don't want anybody in this nation to be able to protect themselves. They're anti-crypto, and I think Jeff Berwick is increasingly correct when he says people who live in the United States falsely believe they're free. We see more and more evidence of that. Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you here in just one second, but I just want to say one thing. I just wonder if the whole crypto space as it pertains to YouTube is becoming a little bit like a religion, because again, all this was two people having what they believed was an informed conversation and asking a lot of questions. And yes, maybe Lynette made some leaps. I don't know that she did. I'm just acquiescing, saying perhaps that's true. But it was just a conversation, and the reaction, was like Muslims, decrying somebody who just spoke badly about Prophet Muhammad. And I was thinking about it today, and it's like, okay, here's the new moniker for these crypto guys: don't mess with a man's wife, his car, or his cryptos.
Cryptos, add cryptos.
You guys were it was just vicious. Okay, so I want to just circle back and let's keep our eye on the ball, because again, Lynette and I were just having a conversation, right? And you said you went to their website. So did I. It's all in Chinese. I can't read a thing. But they did.
Well, they have English. They have an English.
Did they? Okay. But they did make 2 videos that they did publish to YouTube. And here's what they say at the end of one of them. Listen to this.
Asset digitization with ACChain linking billions together will allow global circulation of assets. Together, we can build the future, a shared economic community, and a digital kingdom.
I'll pause it there. Linking billions together. That doesn't sound like a small coin project or a one-off. It sounds like a very, very big idea and a digital kingdom. So I'll turn it over to you, Brad. What have you discovered about the source code? I know you've tried to look into that, or take us away in any direction you'd like.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to say that, I'm interested in an early statement you made there, Sean. I'm interested in people becoming wealthy off of crypto. I'm interested in the little guys becoming wealthy off of crypto, right? Those who are already whales, those who are already in control of the fiat currency systems, screw them, frankly. And when we see something with the potential to allow the current power structure to continue in this new paradigm of cryptos, that's a warning in my mind. Now, to Joe's point here, we need evidence, right? I spent quite a bit of time also poring over websites and through white papers and through source code, as you mentioned, Sean. And I have come up with a bit of evidence, nothing completely, red flag warning that directly links this crypto to, say, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, or the IMF with their SDR, or even the Chinese government. All I see are indicators. And Sean, I sent you some screenshots. Maybe we can jump into those in a minute here. I see indicators that we have a very well-financed, very, very well-connected group of developers and businessmen who are pushing this coin very aggressively. And they're succeeding not just in China, but as you mentioned, in Dallas, in Britain. I mean, they're sort of tentatively moving internationally, and I find that very interesting. Now, to back up just a little bit, because this is a really new thing just hit the airwaves yesterday. ACChain is a concept for, as that video said, digitizing assets. So effectively taking, I think they started with tea leaves in China, taking the the asset of that physical tangible tea leaf asset, pushing it, digitizing it into a brand new coin, and then doing an ICO with that coin, effectively allowing investors within that coin, the new coin, to own a portion of the underlying asset, the tea. They've also moved out to real estate in Dallas. This is similar to the precious concept, and we don't need to get into that right now. We can discuss that later if you wish, Sean. But the comparison ends there. Basically, we're looking at digitizing assets. Yes. When you get into the source code of the ACChain, you really quickly see they're not doing this in a sort of distributed fashion. They're effectively centralizing control. Now, maybe it's just a really aggressive coin model. Maybe they're doing something brilliant. So be it. If it's just a new competitor in the coin space or in the crypto space, cool. But Sean, do you have those screenshots ready to share here with viewers?
Yeah, I do, and let's get to those in a second. And and if I can't share them here through screen share, I assuredly will put them in the video before posting it later tonight. So we'll talk about them. But I just want to see if we can agree on this. And Joe, I want your thoughts. I think where we went wrong, Brad, or where I went wrong with Lynette, is that we should have said if. And actually, you did say if in your email to me. The second paragraph, which I haven't read yet, was, Sean, if a global cryptocurrency controlled by the BIS comes to internationalize property onto their crypto blockchain, they get their one world government and one world currency all in the same stroke. This is the 1988 Economist cover. So I thought that that's really important because I bring up the 1988 Economist cover prediction a lot, which is something big, something new, a world currency in 2018. We've been standing at the cusp of that change here all year. We're less than 6 months away. Maybe the medallion around the phoenix's neck isn't a gold medallion. Maybe it's some sort of cryptocurrency, blockchain, monolithic monster beast coin that'll eat up everything. Joe, can we at least admit that if we had addressed all this as if it's true, we'd have been in a lot better shape than saying it is definitely true?
Well, that's sure. I mean, if you say that, but that's, my issue too, though, when I was listening to her, like she talked about Bitcoin, and how it's, there's supposed to be a certain supply of them, and now it's doubled, and to me, this is like common, base level understanding of cryptos that when these coins split, there's two coins, they're different, they're completely different, and if there's 22 million Bitcoins, by chance they were all, we were at 22 million right now. I think they're at 16 million, but the cap is 22. Then there's 22 Bitcoin, and then there's 22 Bitcoin Cash or whatever.
Right. It's a lot more like a stock spin-off than a stock split. I got you. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, if someone's talking to me, and I, or like in this instance, I'm watching the video, I'm watching you, watching your video, and I hear someone I'm taking as a very knowledgeable, intelligent person, because she is. I mean, I've seen her background. I know the kind of stuff she talks about, and she's, I have no problems with that. The problem was once she started getting into the crypto space, it became like not obvious, but kind of painfully obvious. She's talking at a pretty, making people think, I guess, she's at a much higher level on the crypto space than maybe what the truth was. I guess maybe she was just trying to kind of hold the conversation. I don't know, but when I saw that answer, that's to me like, crypto 101, everybody knows that, and she does, that's what really got me to say, wait a minute, I need to really hone in on what she's saying. And I just got, as I'm watching it again, I'm just getting the emails of people highly concerned, and because they're taking her word, as kind of gospel because of her background, I guess.
Can I jump in here briefly? So
yeah,
Joe, I think this really was a question even for those of us that are really involved in cryptos, because other than Ethereum, we had never really gone through a fork process that had as much publicity as Bitcoin. Half of the people that I work with were concerned that the overall value would diminish when we forked, right? It would be some sort of loss of capital, things would disappear.
How much on Ethereum?
I'm sorry, with Bitcoin. No, okay. Half the people, I actually, didn't pay too much attention when Ethereum took place. I wasn't an investor at that point. But at this point with Bitcoin, there was a lot of concern. And what we learned, it's relatively new knowledge, it just happened, is that when you hard fork, you effectively simplify the crypto space between those coins, because you're basically creating, as you said, a new coin and another coin, and both of which have their own distinct purposes. You're adding value. I don't think we really knew that that was going to be the case. You know, some of us were concerned it was going to fall on its face, coins to be lost. I mean, it's really informative. I think it's going to change business models going forward. People will look at a fork as a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let me say this, too, as it relates to trying to defend Lynette a little bit. You know, Bix also put up a pretty scathing video regarding her today, and I just want to play a couple sound bites from him because, frankly, as I re-listened to the interview, he seems to agree with her more than he disagrees with her. Listen to this.
Yeah, of course there's plans to... The bad guys aren't going to just let this thing go, and the banks aren't going to lose all their control. I would be very wary of real estate-backed anything, knowing that most of the real estate is fraudulently put together with the robo-signing and all that put into a mortgage-backed security. So what a great way to hide it if you put it into something like an ACC coin that basically gives title to the coin, and then you can sell off the coins and basically spread your bad deeds and bad assets to everyone in the world and walk away clean. The banks will probably accept something like that because they know if they can put all their assets into one supernode blockchain, what's it called, ACC coin, they can hide a lot of their crap and a lot of their bad deeds. So there's no doubt in my mind that the IMF would be doing this.
He does admit that this is the dream of the bankers. It's what they'd like to do. They'd like to use the blockchain for nefarious purposes. So I think the conversation is still in play. I think it's a conversation that should continue regardless of whether or not we find out AC coin or whatever, ACC coin or what is it called? ACChain or
ACChain.
ACChain is a real threat to humanity or just another cryptocurrency?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. Like I was looking, like I said, they have numerous ICOs. I got like 3 of them going right now. The tea leaf thing, they've got the other one in Dallas, and it even shows on the page. Current total investors 8. ICO goal 50,000 of these SRTs. And that's a different one, not the SDR. So it's called an SRT. And amount raised currently is only 8,000 out of 50 million. So again, I'm thinking, okay, if this is IMF, bankster boy, you know what I mean, backing. This is a failing ICO. It ends tomorrow.
Well,
so
correct me if I'm wrong.
All I see is just go ahead.
No, I think the original coin offering closed several months ago, and
this real estate one.
Okay.
Here, so the T one though, Sean, if you insert image 6 that I had sent to you, this was from a press release. The T related ICO that they launched. They did it under a company called PureBank, P-U-E-R Bank Group. And I found that in source code, and then I went out and Googled what the heck is PureBank and came up with this T ICO. It raised over 100 billion yuan, which is approximately $15 billion US. That one I would say was pretty profitable.
Yeah, that was massive.
So maybe the Dallas one is early in process. Maybe it's going to grow. Maybe it'll change. I mean, or maybe they're having problems with SEC stuff since that sort of hit us all in the face pretty recently.
Yeah, my question would be again, like if this has anything to do with IMF, there ain't going to be a disclaimer. Hey, America, you can't get into this, like the typical ICO stuff we see every single time where they don't want to deal with the SEC and the regulations. This would be a massive green light, SEC special approval. This is IMF. Essentially, the United States, you look back into that history, we kind of created the IMF. Their home base was in America. So that's like, we're tight. What's going on? So to me, this is just an ICO, and they're doing another ICO and a third ICO, and they want to get everything. They want to be the end all be all. We're the big boy. We're the big player. And then, hey, we got they're just, to me, looking at saying, oh, look, if this was the SDR would be here, central, as kind of a PowerPoint slide without the SD or the IMF's approval kind of a thing. It's like, hey, let me just show these investors or potential investors what we can do. That's kind of what I'm getting out of this whole thing with them.
If I can get a little woo-woo here for a minute, and I know, Joe, you're in on this since you're talking to Cliff all the time.
Well, and I've got a woo-woo moment too, because this whole thing inspired an old memory about when Hillary Clinton was at the State Department. You guys remember the rumor in alt media that she traveled to China and I believe had a meeting, the subject of which was not made public, in which the rumor is she pledged a whole bunch of assets and property to China.
So,
that sparked a thought recently with this whole, altcoin offering. And, one wonders if this isn't one of the ways, since it's a Chinese company, for them to now make good on that promise, because now they're, doing the houses in Texas. I think there's a litmus test happening here. And Brad, you could probably speak to that as an engineer who has to test his software.
Yeah, this is exactly sort of where I was going with my woo-woo as well, Sean. So I'll take that just a step further. Within, I don't recall whether it was the TPP, which Trump shut down, or the TISA, which I don't think Trump has shut down yet. One of them defined, what were they called? Investment exclusion zones, I think it was, where if a foreign nation owned a given property within the U.S., the laws of that foreign nation would apply within that purchased area. How well does this fit into that? I mean, if somebody builds houses or an office park, in the U.S., guess what? They may not have to respect U.S. laws in order to, employ people within that area. It's a potential growth, direction they could have been planning on going, if Trump hadn't shut down the TPP.
Yeah, can we talk about this source code, Brad? You sent me another screen grab here in which in the source code you find an SDR currency list, including the Chinese RMB, the US dollar, Japanese yen, the euro, the British pound, and you wrote smoking gun. Here is their SDR currency map. That may or may not mean anything. To me, I'm not a code guy, and it could just mean that somehow they have their currency pegged, or what do you think it means?
So if you don't mind, let's go through a couple of these source code screenshots. So the first one you're referencing, SDR currency list. To me, it looks like what they're doing is they're digitizing, as their video said, they're, digitizing, tokenizing, symbolizing, right? And then within the symbolizing, that's when they assign a currency mapping to the underlying assets. This here is the currency map. This is the portion of the symbolizing. And this screenshot is really just to indicate, look, this is this is an open source project, and this is another matter. Let me step back and deal with that point too. So early on, when I was investigating this source, to me it looked like it was not a complete source dump. It was an open source project. It was on GitHub, yes, but it didn't look like it was complete or compilable. I started digging in after our emails, and pulled it over to a Linux box where I can actually do a lot more analysis. And when I was digging in, I found out, so it doesn't originate with Bitcoin. It originates with something called ACCH, which is apparently a Chinese original Bitcoin reimplementation in JavaScript. It does not go under Bitcoin at all. So the code looks entirely different, works differently. There's certain similarities, but it does appear to be open source. So for that matter, at least let's set aside it is an open source project. It looks complete. Now, this SDR currency mapping, though, why the heck would a crypto coin want to map the assets with which they are digitizing into the supported SDR currencies, unless they were somehow associated with the SDR? And as Lynette did point out, it sounds like China was assigned ownership of figuring out a way to make the SDR a reality.
Okay, and Joe, jump in if you'd like anytime here. I will try to get to this. Do you want to talk about any of these other screen grabs? You're going to help me.
Absolutely, yeah. If you guys want to respond,
I'll them here.
Yeah, so
can you see these on my screen now? Like if I open that one? Pure Bank is awesome. Somebody had in the code.
Yeah. Here, let's go to image 2 quickly, and I'll walk through these, and then you guys can chime in as you see fit. So here we had actual instances of the assets that they're digitizing. Now, the very first one is quite interesting. It's Bitcoin. Effectively, they're claiming they sit above Bitcoin, and they're going to be able to digitize Bitcoin ownership onto their blockchain. How presumptuous is that? I don't know what their overall motives are, right? But it's a pretty big claim. And then there's some other interesting ones in here. There's something called BUHG. No idea what that is. I'd love to hear input from viewers, but no clue there. We had another one, which was the Mi Ying Yu group. Never heard of that either. If you go and Google, there is some interesting information, and it sounds like they're tied to some of these ICOs. So that's image 2. If we go to image 3, There we have a beginning of what their overall control grid is. They have this, what do they call it? A virtual issuer. Basically within their source code, within their Genesis block, they're identifying quite a large number of originators who have the ability to actually authorize the conversion of an asset into a digital form on ACChain's blockchain. Interesting stuff. Like this is, it's a power structure, right? When most of us, like, you know, I consider myself a constitutional, patriotic type of American, basically, that, you know, I'm interested in freedom and individual rights. These guys, they're looking at imposing a power structure. It looks quite a lot like the existing power structure in a crypto world in a way that they digitize assets. So again, interesting stuff. No smoking gun, no total smoking guns. That you know, first slide's interesting, but like we don't have a direct chain to a bank or to the BIS.
Okay.
Yeah, what I see is kind of what they've said. You know, where they want to be the end all be all of everything. You know, digitize everything, make everything. You know, with the assets, they would have to have that in their source code. I've looked at it myself actually. To me, you know, if you're claiming you're going to do this and this is what our tokens and whatnot, or this particular one can do, I'm not surprised to see that in there. You know, you would have to have some of those conversions and stuff in there with the different currencies and the SDR, because that's kind of what their original videos were showing was, hey, if the SDR, you know, is in the middle or the center and Bitcoin's out here in the US, you know, Supernode and all these nodes, yep. You know, I'm not surprised as what I'm saying that I would expect to see something like this, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, and remember their mission statement too, linking billions together. I'm just not sure how a Chinese startup, unless, well, of course there's over 1 billion people in China, so it's not, you know, an unbelievable statement, I suppose, but there's only, what, 6.5, 7 billion of us on this planet. So if they want to link billions together, again, I just think it lends a little bit of credence to Lynette Zang's premise. And I wish we could find a smoking
all these
gun.
Tokens are, right?
Well, sure, but I just wish we could find a smoking gun linking,
with Litecoin, you know?
Linking this to the IMF and or the BIS. So, you know, and
every coin wants to rule the universe, of course, right? That's the nature of capitalism. But these guys have an embedded power structure that mirrors even the naming of the SDR and the current currencies in their source code. Thank goodness it's source code. It's open source, right? Like we can actually look at this and get some indication of of where they may be going, right? It's not, like I said, it's not 100%, but it looks pretty damn suspicious.
Oops.
I would still ask though, like, you know, you look at some of their videos, the English is wrong, the grammar's wrong, they're using a WordPress template. Like this is not, in my view, even kind of a group that, you know, even behind the scenes or whatever, that was working with the IMF, and let's say we didn't know about it, you know, this little deal they had. This is just, I don't know.
Initial ICO of $15 billion. That's impressive. And let's go on through a few more slides here because there is some more evidence I dug up, and let's just, you know, we'll see where we land.
Yeah, I don't know of any.
Okay, so we have, so PureBank, we can see in the code here, they're talking about PureBank is awesome, right? And then they have their initial dinner mention. It's the keywords that you put in to restore a wallet. Interesting. So this is just where I found mention of PureBank, and that led to Googling around to find, okay, let's go to image 5 and we'll say, okay, what is PureBank? And take a look at this. So I'll read this title here, Sean. So back to a standard system. PureBank benefits the world while the power of the standard system comes into effect all around Britain. Interesting. So they're launching pretty big. It looks like they have acceptance from Central Hall, Westminster in Britain. There were some details about the launch, but I didn't get those in the screen grab here.
Yeah, interesting. And there's one other screen grab that you had as well that you sent.
Yeah,
this one here.
And this is the one where we're talking about the Pure Bank was also the group that was behind this. Actually, let me just read some of this if you don't mind. This was the tea-related ICO. So I'll read this paragraph. In China, PureBank Group first assembled some highly refined collectors tea and established the tea as the standard asset. This was their test of the digitizing system, basically. And on the back of the asset, issued a digital currency in full compliance with the standard that it had developed. They're developing standards. Who are these guys? The group named the currency PUYIN. I don't know how to say that. PUYIN. Then, through an open source asset expansion program, the assets grew in volume and now have a value in excess of 100 billion yuan. PureBank Group took steps to make sure that their technology was sufficiently robust to handle the high volume of asset swaps. And it goes on to discuss how it, added value to the underlying asset, and it was a great thing for the people who owned the T. This, like I said, this isn't a 100% evidence, but what we see here, what we do have evidence of, is they've played in multiple geographies, multiple sovereign countries, including Britain and the U.S. As far as I know, I think Britain signed on as one of the supporting members of the BRICS consortium. So, interesting connection there, maybe why they're playing in Britain. The U.S. is not, so, I'm not sure what's happening there, but I'll throw it over to you guys. This is what I've managed to dig up thus far.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and again, it's just a conversation like the one I had in Lynette. I just don't think conversations should be, relegated to the penalty box if people disagree. And if she's way off base, then she's way off base, and videos should be made. But I just don't think that they should be character assassination videos about the fact that she has, no qualification to even talk about this subject at all, because this subject is new to many of us. And if we're going to start putting up rules and regulations about who's qualified to raise red flags and who's not, I think that's a big mistake. It's a little bit like what's going on with these safe spaces in colleges and stuff today. It's just ridiculous. We got to embrace openness and conversations. And I think, Brad, you've brought a lot of things to the table here that certainly give me pause. I mean, a $15 billion valuation on this thing, or amount raised or whatever, and it's probably all insiders. I don't know. I think it's cause for concern. I don't know. It's I'm glad we're having a conversation.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't. It's a great, phenomenal number for sure. But these tea leaf things. But again, it's the same group. They're doing this thing in America, the real estate thing, and it's, as of right now, it's a horrible fail. If this is the group and they've got that much power and they've got all this money, they just pulled in 15 billion from this tea leaf thing. How are we not seeing that here? Again, this would essentially be a global thing, vampire squid, that's got its tentacles everywhere. And we know the U.S., at least the status quo, the club, which runs the U.S., is all for this kind of stuff. I just can't see. I'm just not seeing anything at this point more than they're ICOing their way to. One was a great success, one wasn't. One was horrible. And then they've got this other thing I was looking on their site, this third coin or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I looked at all this stuff, but again, if you look at what their video shows. I'm talking the ones from a few months ago that they first put out. The kind of stuff we're talking about, and even in the code and stuff, to me, it's totally expected to be in there because of what they're trying to say. Hey, here's what we can do with our coins and our tokens and this this platform that we want to create. And
Joe, let me interrupt with just a question. Why would they mirror the structure of the SDR as we know it if they were not associated with the IMF or with the SDR in any way?
What do you mean?
Well, they're mirroring the currencies, right? The 5 currencies that make up the SDR, the index. They're in code, and also the power structure as far as the supernodes, of the U.S. and China and however it may grow. Why would they mirror that power structure if they were purely just an independent coin trying to win in a free market?
I see that as you have a structure you and I can see, other people can see. They clearly have too. They know the structure, the IMF, the SDR, the fact that China's been put in there not too long ago. So again, if you're going to present something to people and say, hey, look what we can do, it's got to be legit. It can't be, fake. These are things we all know about, so put it in there as we know it. So we know there's the structure with all these different, countries with their currencies. We've got the IMF/SDR in the middle, and they're just saying, we can digitize this whole thing, and they have to show you the way it is currently. I don't know. That's how I'm seeing it.
So there is your argument they're hoping to sell out to the IMF eventually? Say, hey, IMF, look, we can digitize all these things. Buy us out. I mean, that effectively sounds like it, right? I mean, digitizing assets is something the free market can do. That's something that Precious Coin is looking at doing. But we would never subjugate ourselves to a control structure that, is really against, I would say, humankind.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, you got all these other coins, like Bitcoin or whatever. Are they all going to sign up and allow their coins to use this kind of structure when we're talking about decentralized versus the centralized, like super nodes? I don't know any of these coins that would even say, okay, I sign. We're against that, but yeah, we're going to join this giant superstructure. Again, I think they're just trying to show off this massive capability that they have, to hopefully prepare that when wherever we head technologically speaking in blockchain land, they'll be like, oh, we're ready. We're ready to deal with that first. We've already got a lot of the stuff in place. Use us, for whatever part of it they need to be part of. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of my take on it.
I hope you're right. Some of this we're going to see as we go forward, right? I mean, at the very least, Joe, you have to admit it's pretty interesting what they are doing.
Clearly.
And that, there is potential for concern here. I would add to this discussion, Sean, this is an insight you and I discussed via email, and I think it was relevant to this discussion here. If we in the U.S. are sitting here in a house and the house is valued, let's just say, you have a $300,000 house, and your neighbors is similar, and you start to see the house market top out and start to decline, perhaps because your house is denominated in dollars, the fiat currency of the U.S. starts to fall on its face because, debt levels are through the roof, right? Very plausible scenario. If the value of your house in dollars collapses, but at the same time, your neighbor's house is perhaps on an ACChain or some other digitized, blockchain, it's not exposed to the US dollar, which is perhaps collapsing. Therefore, its value may not diminish. That right there is an incentive. While your house is going down in value, that's an incentive for you with your house to say, holy crap, I want to get on that blockchain too. So then, people go and maybe they look at how to digitize their assets. This is a danger that we might not actually see fully realized until we have a crisis, and then we start to see people moving assets into a position where they're not exposed to the failing of the fiat currencies.
It's interesting, although, in an environment like that where all of the neighbors' houses were falling in value except for one guy, and we were going through some sort of hyperinflationary crisis, nobody's going to be able to buy your house, from you. I mean, if America burns down and you're the one guy whose house is still worth $650,000 while everybody else lost everything, I mean, it's just numbers on a blockchain, right? I'm not sure how that really would happen.
Yeah, but if you're comparing a blockchain value, whatever token value versus US dollar value, isn't it kind of the same? If your house, if the dollar is hyperinflated away, it's still kind of the same conversion one way or the other. I mean,
so let me try to address that. It's a good point. And this is something Cliff has said a number of times where it sounds, we all love Cliff, obviously.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Love the guy, Sean. So he said a number of times, it sounds like with his predictions, it sounds like we're heading into a situation where the credit markets seize up in US dollars, right? If the credit markets do seize up, then Sean, exactly as you said, people won't be able to buy your house denominated in dollars. But if your neighbors is on the ACChain, it's not up for sale in dollars, right? It's only up for sale in whatever their currency is called, whatever coin they launch based upon real estate. That currency may not be going through the same conditions. Now, if there is a change in relative conversion rates, the dollar could inflate away, but how would that work?
Well,
I would suspect that only people that are sitting on a pile of cash would really be able to move in and buy a house. So at the very least, the number of buyers is going to go down. So in dollars, I would say the price is going to go down. Even if the currency does inflate away, there's still not going to be as many buyers.
Right.
So to me, it looks like incentive to, jump over to that digitized asset blockchain.
Right.
But if you're also the American government, at least at this stage is, and honestly, probably a bit out into the future as far as I could see, I would think, dollar is king, do everything to save the dollar. Are they going to actively promote, hey, dump this turd dollar and, go sell your house into this asset? Like they would literally criminalize, blockchain technology if that was the case when people, when dollars are dying. And, to me anyways, I think we would, honestly, we're going to at some point see, they always got to make us feel pain or else we're not going to want the change. Why change anything if we don't feel pain? So we have to feel some kind of financial pain. And I think, this is my opinion, we're going to see dollar dying, a little bit of pain financially for all of us. Yet, oh my God, look at the price of cryptos these days and or gold. And it's going to cause people to just say, "For the hell with this, I'm putting my money, whatever I can over here in blockchain to save their bacon." I don't know that we're going to be at the level of like what we were just talking about, where these houses already on the blockchain or whatever as assets or digitized at that point. Could that come after the smoke and stuff settles, as them saying, "Hey, we realize we effed up, whatever. We can't go back to the old system. We know you guys aren't going to put up with that. Here's the new system. Look how well these cryptos did during the crisis, and we're going to go ahead and make things to whatever get out of the dollar, what's left of it, into cryptos."
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think cryptos, I think, have the sky's the limit. Obviously, it's the future. And I would say one thing I would chime in here with is, when somebody launches a new ICO, it's basically a business. They're providing a product. It's just a new way to finance a business idea, and it just happens to be a currency. So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do there. But the underlying reality is just every ICO. Like if you take crypto, as a whole, it's a refutation of the power of the central banks. They're going to want to counter us somehow, some way.
Yep.
ACChain looks like a really good way that they could potentially do so.
But don't you think that they, when the IMF came about or any of these, elitist organizations, they don't use someone else's like technology or their thing. They have their own. They create their own dollar. They create their own structure. They are like the central bank kind of a thing, them and the World Bank. And I would think to myself, which I've already thought, I sent some kind of talking points to myself in an email, but wouldn't they have either hire the best and brightest period and do this while you and I don't even know it's happening and have this infrastructure built? Or do they use some Chinese company, again, the grammar's wrong, the videos are weird, all this stuff, to later on tell us we're going to go with those guys?
Well, that's just the English.
Me,
That's just the English translation too. Number one, but number two is, how do we know these aren't the best and brightest in China? How do we know that this isn't the effort being made to pursue this and still have plausible deniability? They're not going to come right out and do this in public, Joe. You know that. They're going to keep their secret
but it'd have to be an
plans
IMF
secret until they hatch them, until it's too late.
Yeah. Or the SDR.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Like, why wouldn't we hear about the IMF, some group making this, not taking someone else's application and saying later on, we're going to go with those guys.
Because there would be a resistance to it, right? There would be resistance. If the IMF, you guys talk about this all the time. There is a big immune response of humanity against the central bankers right now, thanks to folks like G. Edward Griffin and everybody's against it. If they actually came out and it was open, my God, the response would be very powerful. There would be patriots and independent people everywhere saying, "Screw you, we're never touching that coin." They have to do something, quietly and, as Sean said, deniably.
I'll say this too. Small Gold Lewis tends to disagree with a lot of things that a lot of us discuss. He does not believe that the collapse of the U.S. dollar is around the corner or imminent in any way. And he sent me a bunch of emails today, and I did promise to try to mention some of those. So, and he doesn't necessarily agree with Lynette either. Here's one of his emails. Says, Lynette talked about market SDRs. There are no such things. There are SDR bonds based on the value of the SDR, but payable not in SDRs, but in an IMF currency like yuan. I think the Chinese won last fall is the only one. SDRs trade only among member banks as a reserve asset. He says he's still shaking his head. SDRs are nothing more than digital abstractions that represent the value of a basket of currencies, but are not backed by those currencies. So along comes a company that is going to digitize T and other assets, and somehow the IMF is going to abandon the structure of the IMF to include digitized T as part of the SDR basket. And there are other emails here, so count him as a skeptic as well. But, you know, again, I think it's a conversation worth having, and I don't think that we should stop having conversations when we know that there is stuff going on behind the scenes. Plans are being hatched to get us into whatever this new system is. As the 1988 cover, The Economist magazine predicted 30 years ago, in 2018, get ready for a new world currency. What does that look like? I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like a dollar being the world's reserve currency anymore.
And if I might add, the SDR, as Smuggled said, is a basket, an indexed basket of world currencies. That's kind of exactly what ACChain is doing, right? They're digitizing individual assets into individual currencies and then coagulating those into an indexed SDR. And they're not actually providing any means for individuals who participate to trade their SDR. It's only those individual, asset-based currencies. So to me, it sounds like the mapping within ACChain and the mapping of how he described the SDR are one-to-one, right? Just the understanding is different.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had you on mute there, guys. I was trying to find something that I saw at Zero Hedge earlier today. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Regarding Wells Fargo, I think their CEO or CFO or somebody was just fired because of the unbelievable incompetence and essentially corruption at Wells Fargo. And it just sparks the thought. We know what happened in 2008 with the bailouts, the TARP funds. These bankers are at the highest level. They are professional liars and thieves. So what's to stop any of these criminal international banks from engaging in whatever the promise has been made behind the scenes, the handshake deal between the bankers? We know Hillary Clinton admitted to Goldman Sachs she has a public and a private position on everything. She too is a liar. If she pledged assets of the United States, land, property, or people to China, what's to stop them from making good on that promise if they can do it in secret? And by the time you figure out your house has been digitized and sworn to China, it may be too late when they start knocking on your door with an eviction notice. I know that's a leap. It's a gigantic leap. But it is, it's woo-woo, as Cliff would say. It's woo-woo.
Totally fair. Totally fair. Yeah, I think if we can move into the potential for this coin, if we just assume and put aside the controversy for a minute as to, whether it is the SDR, whether it's just an independent company, if we assume for a moment that it is related to the SDR and to the IMF and to the power structure, you get into conversations like that. And, where they can take this, I mean, how long is it before they're not just digitizing a house, but maybe digitizing a person? This guy has a degree, this guy doesn't, this guy, has an IQ of whatever. Digitize them, right? They become an asset to your super node.
Well, and this does tie into the 5G Internet of Everything, in which they absolutely want it. They have said they want billions of microchips. They want to chip every living thing. They want to chip every product. They want to chip everything. It's going to be trackable. It's traceable. It's tradable. How do you trade these assets they're going to how do you trade these assets they want to chip if you don't digitize them? This may well be the slippery slope towards the beast system that we've been talking about for a long time. The 5G, the Internet of Everything, the mass chipping. It's all sort of falling in line as far as I can see. And yes, we're making leaps, but again, it's conversations that we need to have because it is all part of their new world order system. I don't think they're going to go softly into this good night, you guys. They are not going to go away, short of an alt-right revolution, and that's the scariest part. Joe, do you have 5 more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to give Brad an opportunity to talk about Precious Coin. This is not an advertisement for Precious Coin. It's not why Brad's on.
Before we go there, let me just say one thing, just to make myself kind of clear to everybody. I probably should not have said, Lynette, you're not even qualified to talk like this, That was probably me being aggravated by the massive emails hitting me and people scared to death in panic mode and me just wanting to kind of, say what I had to say. But she's very qualified with, I mean, I look at her background, her financial background, her banking background. She knows what the hell she's talking about. It was really essentially when she started talking about the Bitcoin stuff and didn't understand the forking and all that, which made me think, just like she's not even qualified to talk about this stuff. What is she doing? You know, she's causing panic. But I want to say she's definitely a truther. She's out there trying to get the word out to people. I totally respect that. I respect her. I probably should not have used the word, you're not qualified to talk, like that. I was just extremely aggravated at the time. And, sometimes me, realist newsman, I got to keep it real. I got to go out there, do my car real fast and say something, And maybe sometimes I speak a little too soon or too quick. So there's no disrespect to her. I don't mean any. There's a guy who's trying to possibly set up a roundtable discussion between me, her, and him kind of moderating it. And I'll be glad to do that too. I'm not here to bash people, but just want to kind of get that out of the way.
Yeah, that's very nice of you to say that. I appreciate that. And I mean, because we're all in this mess together, right? And I loathe infighting. And that's why in my response video that I posted earlier tonight, which I think I titled, what did I title it? Fear and Loathing in Crypto Land. I don't dislike, you guys are my friends, Bix and you, Joe, and who else? Andy Hoffman. I've known a lot of you guys for a long time, so I hate infighting. So I'm just glad we were able to have this conversation and try to find some common ground, because I don't think when it comes to cryptos and the plans of the international criminal bankers, there are any dumb questions. I think the whole goal is to wake people up. And again, the responsibility I'll take with that interview is that I guess we presented everything as fact, and I really need to be more careful too. And that's my responsibility. I'll try to be more careful about those things in the future. So really glad we had this talk. And Brad, you did say originally in that email to me that you felt like this new ACChain thing was sort of an evil twin to what you guys are trying to work on with Precious Coin. Can you just give us the 2-3 minute elevator speech? Tell us about Precious Coin and how it could be a way to liberate humanity versus enslave humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this concept of asset digitization it's brilliant, and it's going to happen because, frankly, the paperwork that you deal with in selling through the traditional routes is typically, just overwhelming. I mean, try to sell a house and see what it costs you. Same thing, try to ship something internationally. So I'm pretty sure the, assets are going to be digitized, and this is a good thing. Now, the question is, how do we manage that? How do we, as individuals, benefit from that? Do we allow the existing power structure to maintain control and to basically come in and say, yes, Joe, you can sell yours, but Sean, you cannot, right? Screw that. I am all about decentralization. Precious Coin mirrors our vision. It's like I said, the twin of ACChain, but our control structure is distributed as well. We're looking for input from the people who own the coin. Now, if Joe, to take an example, just to use you for a moment, you owning 1,000 precious coins would effectively have 1,000 votes as to whether a particular asset were digitized or not. Right? It's a vote process, and if it is digitized, new currency is created to purchase that asset, bring it onto the blockchain. Now, you get to vote because when we create new coins, that dilutes the purchasing power of the coin, right? There's more coin around, therefore it impacts you directly. We see that as you, as the owner of this coin, of this community, have the right to decide whether your asset is diluted or not. Now, the idea being, if you do purchase this house, you do bring it onto the blockchain, it brings value to the coin as a whole, because perhaps you can rent that house out. And the rental income comes back to the coin. That's income to the coin. That's income to you as well. So it's a judgment call for the community to decide how we grow, whether we grow or whether we, don't. If we want to expand to China, that's part of the vote process. So, if to step back on ACChain for a moment, ACChain is all about the power structure. The supernodes decide what gets digitized, how they do it, whether they do it, and how much coin gets generated. If they are deciding to print 10% more of their coin, how is that different than the current central banking model?
And let me ask you a question on that.
Sure.
On that, the ACC thing. Did you come across any kind of patent for their like blockchain technology at all in your research?
No, I didn't see anything.
I didn't either. And that was kind of another flag for me to say, well, man, if you got Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, these guys going out patenting, putting patents on their blockchain technology, this is the IMF. They would, you know what I mean? Like, this has got to happen. That's one of the, that's what I was going to ask you, because I couldn't find anything myself, which isn't to say it's not there, but I didn't find anything, you know?
It's an interesting point. It might be something
you'd have to patent
into.
that, you know, but who knows?
If I might just take one more minute with Precious. So, Sean, because I did, launch the pre-ICO on your channel about a week before the SEC shut down everybody that was doing an ICO. We've revised things somewhat. We're still proceeding. The way that we're looking at things, we did learn from the Bitcoin hard fork. We're currently the investors that we got, and we got a great deal of interest after your channel, which was after that show aired. It was pretty phenomenal, the number of people. I've been buried in emails ever since.
Well, and by the way, I didn't. The goal of that conversation was not even to talk about
not
Precious.
At all.
You
not
just
at all.
brought it up at the end. So
it was 5 minutes at the very end of an hour-long discussion. So it was amazing the input that we got. So what we're doing, though, we did learn from the Bitcoin hard fork. What we're doing, we're starting small. We're going to be launching a coin. We're looking at 2 weeks, initial coin version 1. And then we're actually planning on taking advantage of that hard fork. We're going to hard fork monthly. So early investors actually are going to, get the first coin. We're going to hard fork approximately a month later with added features. Hard fork a month later with added features. And then after, we're looking at currently 4 revisions. Fourth one is full Precious, the full goal of the, as I said, the voting community, the digitization of assets, the whole thing. So getting in early, there is benefit still, but we're modeling it differently because hard forks are a good thing. They lend value, they lend clarity, and each individual one is effectively a business.
all right. Well, this digitizing of assets thing, I feel like I'm in above my head a little bit here, guys. I've gone beyond my pay grade here, but I do appreciate the information, and it would be interesting to get Jsnip and Cliff to have a conversation with you about Precious in the future and what you see.
We may have to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just really glad we talked about this ACChain thing, guys, and I really appreciate Jsnip. Joe, I appreciate all your time. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And of course, Brad from Intel, very cool of you to take time to visit with us as well.
Thank you, Sean. Joe, pleasure speaking with both of you.
By the way, Brad, whenever you sign off on Skype, does it go do 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 do? The Intel sound?
That's a different sound. It sounds like it's crashing. It's terrible.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. And everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your support at sgtreport.com, which is now finally mobile friendly. And we've been working hard to make improvements to the site. So please stick with us for real news 24/7, the antidote to corporate propaganda. Thanks for watching. God bless.
The goal is to capture your wealth. And when they say this is the last wealth transfer mechanism, I believe they mean it because they want it all of it.